morning, everybody. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It is great to see you this morning. All right. Whew, running to, we have our Paul Klee class immediately following this stream. So we have a lot to look forward to today. And I was just gathering my thoughts, gathering my stuff. Okay, good. We are live. Candace, good morning. Great to see you. April, good morning. Crystal, good morning. Great to see you. Looks like there's something wrong with the stream. I hope it's okay because it says 0 viewers. I'm hoping it's good. Let's see what happens. Looks like I'm live. Okay. Maybe we're okay. Maybe it's just glitching. Karen, Linda H. in Massachusetts, good morning. Karen, good morning in Black Forest, Colorado. Great to see you. Going out into the garden to cut back the dead stuff. Oh, that sounds like a metaphor and it sounds great. Linda, great to see you. Okay, good. It looks like it's kicking in now. Could not tell for a second there. Having fun, fun with the computer. All right. Well, this morning we are looking at a new book, and I'll remind you part way because I feel like there is a bit of a hiccup in our stream. But this morning we're beginning our look at, we've been looking at a series of books that we have been lucky enough to have been given a couple of copies of each by Rug Hooking Magazine. This is their press, Amory Press. And this is the latest book that will be part of a giveaway. This is Hooked on Celtic Rugs. So this has a Celtic theme. Chrissy, good morning. Good to see you. This has a Celtic theme, and it really is a beautiful book. So this is what we're going to be looking at this morning. I will tell you as the thread goes on a little bit, and I see buddies logging on, I will tell you what to do to enter the drawing for this book. So I will pull the drawing on, today's Wednesday, so I will do that. I'll plan on doing that at the Friday show. I think on Friday, I might do in terms of content, I might look at the book called, it's not a giveaway book, it's a newer book. It's called, I think, Hooked on Handcrafts. Let me show you the cover. I have it right over here. We're going to be doing this on Friday, Hooked on Handwork. So I was just going through this now and thinking about it as content. Kara, good to see you. Hello in Illinois. So we'll do this on Friday for our cocktail time episode at 7 p.m. But today we are looking at Hooked on Celtic Rugs. Hooked on a lot of things, right? But all positive things, right? Nothing too scary. So I want to look at this book by Gail Lambert, and she really is really explicitly clear and inspirational in this book. I'd say this book in general, and I'll show you why, is about a 50-50 mashup between being an inspiration book. Obviously, if you like Celtic design, Celtic knots, symbolism, if you love Ireland and all things Irish, this is the book for you. But it's 50% inspiration, and I think it's 50% technical. It's very technical in the best way. It's a very good how-to book because it's a little different hooking in the Celtic style than it is doing other kinds of hooking because of the intricacy in Celtic design by nature, right? If you took the designing like the Book of Kells class with me, not that long ago, I guess it was the beginning of the year, maybe the end of last year. It was tricky. We did a lot with Celtic knots, and they were very intricate. Once you have it locked in your head how to make these motifs, you are golden. But until it's kind of locked, and it's one of those things that locks, right? It's like the switch goes, and then you got it, and you understand what needs to happen to successfully make these motifs. But Celtic design is intricate by nature, isn't it? It's very knot driven, and that's what gives it its great beauty. There's a lot of pictorial stuff in this book as well. So we'll take a look at everything that this book has to offer. I feel better about the thread now. It's looking more normal. It was looking very strange, like nothing was happening, but you all are there, and that makes me feel like we should carry on. Linda Ann, good morning. Good to see you. It's been over 86 today. I just don't understand. You were getting the craziest cold weather, and all of a sudden you are tropical, and we are freezing our somethings off. I've got my scarf on. I've got my like woolly slippers on. I've had the heat on under my desk. It's not that cold, but it's really damp because it's been wet every day. Happy spring, right? Oh man, speaking of which, Colleen, great to see you. Couldn't miss the Celtic rugs. No, let me say now, just in case you have to run, I know a lot of people are, I know some of you are here and then taking the Designing Like Paul Klee class with me immediately following at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That class will repeat live. So I run the same content live on Sunday. If you can't make today, it doesn't matter to me which class you signed up for. Log on to either or both, and you will be sent a recording regardless if you can't log on to either. But if that's coming up with you too, you probably are feeling like a bit of a home stretch thing at this point. We have like the other day, we have a lot of time together live today, which is a lot of fun. I'm just going to move the computer over and we're going to do that soon. But in case you are logging off early in this episode, this is the third book giveaway sponsored by Rug Hooking Magazine. And for this one, if you want to enter the contest for the Celtic book that we're about to explore, send an email to ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. In the title line, please put Celtic or Celtic book, but definitely use the word Celtic. Celtic is enough so that Jane is able to find them, flag them, and we're able to put them into like the random number drawing. So ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com, Celtic in the title. And the question for this sort of entry, right? Because I always ask you a question to answer so I can share the answer when you win. The question this time is, why did you get started with your rug making? Like, what brought you to it? So if you just answer that, even if it's just a sentence, or if you have a lot to say on it, I'll take either one. Either one is great. I'm just curious. It's a getting to know you kind of a question. Judy, good morning. Cold and crisp is much more manageable than chilly and damp. Absolutely. I'll take cold and crisp any day. It is like through your clothing, wet and damp lately. We have family from the Netherlands visiting, and I'm not going to blame them for the terrible weather, although it does rain every day over there, at least for the 10 years that I lived there. I'm not going to say they brought the bad weather with them, but ever since they've been here, it has been raining constantly, constantly. I guess I just implied it though, didn't I? All right, so let's look at this first. Oh, you know what? Let me tell you some other stuff that's going on because we have a bunch of other things. Let's just do that quickly. So we have a bunch of other things happening right now. I'm a little bit scattered today. This hook-in was announced on the last coffee time. This is the next hook-in design for us, Black Sheep. And at the top you can see a reversed baba. So in the body of the sheep, I am going to punch in black yarn because this is a black sheep for me. You can do it however you like, but for me it's a black sheep. And I'm going to punch him quite high, right, without washers. Dave, good to see you. Hot coffee nearby. Oh, God, yeah, rainy there too, huh? So this is now available, and the link to get this kit is it for the Hookalong, right? I can't remember what the date is. Let me tell you what the date is. It's in the body of this video that you are watching. And I have the hook-in schedule, the Hookalong scheduled for Sunday, May 21st. So the last Sunday before I go away to Cape Cod. So we'll be doing this live, and it'll probably take me realistically 3+ hours to hook. And again, I will be punching the body. You do whatever you want. You could punch the whole thing or hook the whole thing. But the things that are a little bit different about this one so far as I can foresee are we will be hooking text, which is always a little bit tricky. So that's something I want to do with you. I like to bring a new technique to each of the live hook-alongs that we do. So I will be punching his body in a much higher loop, and I will be hooking text, and those two things will be different about this. So this is what the pattern looks like, and this is the color palette that I put together for this. So so sign up for this if you want the kit. If you are a Patreon member, then you have received this morning this pattern gridded, because if you're a Patreon member, many of you are already, let me get this frame off here, hooking for a long time, probably longer than me. And if you would like to print it out as your free pattern of the month, you can make it any size you want. But for the Hookalong, it's a set size, so it's available also to buy in the Ribbon Candy Hooking Store, much larger. But for the Hookalong, it needs to be kind of manageable, or else I'm going to be hooking it all day and night. So that'll be the next Hookalong that we've got going on. I want to remind you that Elephant in the Room is available as a kit and as a pattern. This is while I was punching him with some of these hand-dyed yarns that I dyed. This is all hand-dyed yarn, 3-ply, specifically for this project. And then I finished him off not that long ago. I still haven't blocked him, and he will definitely turn into a pillow because he is just calling out to be a pillow. And the Paul Klee class is also in the description of this video that you're watching. If you're not signed up for Paul Klee, make sure that you become signed up either for this afternoon or for Sunday. This is going to be a really, really good one because he is already so graphic and designy. He's very color driven, right? He does a lot with like children's drawings as inspiration and not so much cubism, but geometry, right? Because a little bit of a difference there. It's going to be a super fun class, and it's going to lend itself very easily to whatever kind of rug making that you do. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm pacing myself a little bit and really looking forward to that. Oops, I clicked on the fairy tale rugs. That's not what we're doing this morning. This is what we're doing this morning. Hooked on Celtic Rugs, a fresh approach to Celtic art and rug hooking by Gail Lambert. Hang on, I'm going to take a sip of this Dunkin' iced coffee sweet cinnamon coffee cake muffin can, which is hopefully going to wake me up a little bit. Oh, yeah. So, absolutely beautiful book. Let's get started looking inside of it. Now, as usual, I just want to show you sort of an overview of what the book is like. Book looks like this, right? The book is about 100 pages long. It's a lot of designs. It's a lot of designs, right? So you're opening it up and you've got introduction. This book, and this is definitely worth mentioning, not only contains a lot of beautiful patterns, but also recipes, which I think are super fun. I'm not really talking about the recipes in this video, but the recipes are for potato and leek soup, Irish classic, scones, Irish soda bread, a slow cooker boneless leg of lamb, a shepherd's pie, a microwave custard, and a trifle. Now I am having a problem with hunger and thinking about food and lunch. So I love that. There's something so sweet, no pun intended, about including recipes in a rugging book, right? Because we're talking about crafts, but it makes a lot of sense to also include recipes somehow. Very cozy. We go into acknowledgments and introduction pretty quickly. And this introduction picture is the one that we were looking at here. So Gail introduces the book by, and I'm just going to read the very beginning. The designs in this book represent a fresh and modern approach to looking at the tradition of Celtic art. Completing these patterns represents your engagement in a living culture, the visually rich realm of Celtic art. Each design you complete will represent a co-creation between you and us is Gail, the author, and David, the pattern designer. And then she talks about the most common motifs of Celtic art, like books, knots, spirals, letters, animal shapes, right? April, good morning. I didn't know that it had recipes. It does have recipes. And really pretty ones too. I'll show you what the pages look like when I get to a recipe page. But Gail talks about beginning her journey as an artist by looking at the Book of Kells. And I won't go hugely into that because we did a class on that not that long ago, and it really was fun looking at the Book of Kells. And if you took that with me, you'll remember it's not just the Book of Kells, right? There are a lot of books, medieval, a little bit before, a little bit after, that include illumination, right? And the reason they include illumination oftentimes is because not everybody could read the text, but you still wanted to know what the stories were. And from time period to time period, right, with changes in terms of like church changes, political changes in Ireland, during that, we're talking hundreds of years ago, of course. So I'm doing an overview of many hundreds of years. So I'm not talking about like one period of time, but as things changed and morphed, and the pendulum kind of swung on the Irish culture, we're talking about different images to represent different things, different animals to represent different biblical figures, apostles, right? So those kinds of things change from one period to the next and from one text to the next. It's not like you get the image of a specific animal or hybrid animal-human creature, and in Celtic terms, it represents this person for all of eternity. Everything is kind of a moving target. So there's a lot of fun research to do if you're interested in Irish Celtic history. There's a lot of research to do because there's a lot of books to look at for content. And the Book of Kells is one of them, and obviously that's the most famous one. But there are many others, and they have very different styles of decoration and very different character and animal associations with famous, mostly religious figures. So this book has a great introduction, welcoming you into Celtic hooking, starting with the Scottish blessing. Wherever you live in the world so wide, we wish you a nook on the sunny side, with much love and a little care, a little purse with money to spare, your own little hearth when day is spent, in a little house with heart's content. That really is beautiful. In this beginning, where she does the introduction, she talks about all of the important beginner things. If you're a beginner and you like Celtic art, this is going to be a great jumping off point for you, because she talks about everything from the design to transferring the design to physically doing the hooking. Hooking tips in here. She's one of her hooking tips here. She said, I never use a number 6 cut in Celtic patterns. Most Celtic patterns have small compact designs within a larger design and won't translate into wider hooking cuts. A good example of this would be feathers within a body, the tiny spot. So tiny spot has no room for any cut larger than a number 3. So she's saying that she's hooking with a number 3 with her designs. Of course, this is all scalable. If you're doing a really large piece, right, you can hook with a wider cut and still get that fine detail. But in this book, as with most Celtic designs and as with manuscripts, the art is outlined. The motifs are outlined, right, to give them a real pop, because it is very intricate work. So her tip is to not go too she talks about transferring with red dot, and it looks like she's working on rug warp. And she talks about different backings. But yeah, that's her tip for cut. And of course, it does matter. It does matter what you like working with too. Everything is adaptable and everything is scalable. But when you are working with tiny motifs, you might want to work with a mixed cut or a smaller cut. That's the takeaway. And she gives you tips like this with outlining, right? Particularly with manuscripts, sometimes they have several outlining lines or colors, and the outlining is part of the prestige. If you think about what those letters would look like at the beginning of a chapter, sometimes they start with a big letter T on the word the or something, or and it's a really blinged out giant letter with lots of different colors of outlining. She's saying put the colors together before you hook it, lay them down so you can see in terms of the cut and the size of the cut that you're outlining with what the letters will actually look like when they're finished. Really beautiful work and a lot of beautiful tips. Let me look at what the next image is that I picked. I left a lot out as usual. It's the one I'm looking at right here, where she says, notice how the black outline color defines each section clearly when pulled high enough. Hooked claws are a good example of this, as is the narrow to wide flow of ribbons in some letter designs. I enjoy the connection this gives to the carpet pages from the ancient gospel books. They used gold leaf. I use wool. So she's making a great point here, and she's showing you close-ups of things that you really do need to see. Let's see. This is I just want to show you this before we move to the next image. She's showing you how she's hooking stage by stage, the different motifs. And you see what I mean? And circular motifs, which is a big boo always, right? Those are the toughest ones to hook. She's showing you how to do it in a really clever way, and in what order. So of course, whenever you look at a book that has this kind of detail, this is how Gail works. If you work differently, it doesn't mean that you're working wrongly. If you're getting all roads lead to Rome, if you're getting to Rome in a different way, then that's fine. But if you're a beginner, this is extremely helpful to really be talked through how somebody's working. And she's giving lots of tips in the text for physical hooking, right? So even if you are not a beginner and you're thinking, oh, I'm always curious to see how other people work, this is going to be a great book for that. Her hooking tip here, well, she said Celtic designs can be hooked with wool yarn using the same rules as wool strips. Hook on the line and fill in the small sections as you hook. I think that is a great tip, because I've done a little bit of Celtic stuff. The Design Like book has a chapter in Designing Like the Book of Kells, and Carol hooked the piece for that, which was a tricky piece, and she did it better than I could have ever done it. I've done limited hooking with Celtic motifs, but I love Celtic motifs, and I've spent time in Ireland, and I just love the culture. I love the stories. I love the lore, and it is tricky work. And you can see how with work that's as intricate as, like, for example, this design, it is a great tip to say, fill in the little parts as you go. Because you can imagine if you just hook the outline with something this tricky, that you will immediately just see the outline and it'll be hard to see the backing anymore, right? And you'll be thinking, what is that there? Is that the center of the knot or the top right hand corner of a knot? What color am I supposed to fill that in? It is a good thing when you're outlining and working this small to fill as you go so that you don't lose track of what the color plan is, right? Because then it's very, very tricky when everything is outlined and all you see is a forest of outlining. It's hard to remember what you meant to do, right? Sharon, good to see you. So all of these tips are very good. You can imagine with this book, the color planning, everything about it must have been very, very tricky, right? Just because it's busy work. There are a lot of examples at the back of the book, patterns to hook, and the patterns are all in this book that are very straightforward and for a beginner would be really good to start with. Another tip, hooking with a hoop. Sometimes backing material pulls or distorts easily, and you find it difficult to maintain the tension when you first start hooking with a hoop. For example, before you get a frame, right? If you start with a hoop and you're seeing if you like it. She says, if I can't tighten the top screw any further, remove the top ring and wrap a thin strip of cotton fabric around the bottom ring. Okay, we've talked about this sometimes. This is worth repeating. This should fill it out, increasing the tension. So she's basically saying take the two hoops apart. And if you've seen this, I've seen this a lot in like antique stores, Victorian era hoops, where they've wrapped a ribbon or something around the bottom hoop just to make it tighter. Because she's saying when it's as tight as it can be and that little hook, the little screw with the little nut is as tight as it can be and it's still not tight enough. Oh, Marielle, good to see you in Argentina. I'm sorry I missed that. Welcome. If you can't get it tight enough, it is good to wrap a cotton, I'm looking around as I'm talking, a cotton ribbon, or, I can't see any right here. I've moved my stuff around recently, or that gauze, like from the first aid aisle of a pharmacy, you know, the self-adhesive gauze, and on Amazon they sell it in every color. It comes very thin and then it comes thicker and it only sticks to itself. So it's not like it has a sticker, you know what I mean? It's mesh and it's stretchy. That stuff for me is the best, and that's what I bring teaching. If people are working on hooks, I bring that. So if they are having this problem with tension, like the hoop is not tight enough, you can wrap it around the bottom one and it is so tight that you almost can't put the hoop back on when it's fully unscrewed. So that is well worth $1 or $2 to get some gauze, because that will save you the trouble of having to keep tightening up your backing fabric in the hoop, right? I was just going to say, this is what I was going to say. Have you heard of, I hope I'm not screwing this up, embroidery hoops, vintage embroidery hoops called Queen? Because Jay pulled some up the other day and he said, are you aware of these hoops? Because they sell for a stupid amount of money, like in the thousands. And even like a small, like 6-inch one is like $300, $400, not seashells, right? Dollars. I mean, this is like insane. I'd never heard of them. And I thought, my God, I have a degree in like textiles. I have been in textiles my whole life. I have never heard of this racket, but they must be exquisite hoops. They are hoops. They are embroidery hoops. I mean, check it out on eBay. It's a crazy thing. Token Truck, so happy to have you there in Texas. Good morning. Great to see you. Anita, good morning. High winds. Yeah. Well, it's funny in Canada, right? You're having high winds. Linda Ann over on the western side is having like a tropical day. Crazy changes. Mm, absolutely nutty weather. I guess it's just going to get worse and worse. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but you know. So, okay, so then we see stuff like this. Really classic. Oh, wait a minute. I almost wrote over something really exciting. Potato leek soup. So these are what the recipe pages look like. And then she writes things like this over here. Now, after reading all the different terms, rules, and explanations, if your mind is spinning, treat yourself to a nice hot bowl of soup. It's easy to make, and you can enjoy this recipe with the family. They'll think they were working hard all day. They'll think you were working hard all day. That is so cute. That is really so cute. So this book has quite a bit of recipes. If you're just joining, it has quite a few recipes in it. And then she talks about, Gail goes into hooking Celtic designs, right? Very specific. So this is why I say, Scottish blessing, may the roof above never fall in, may we below never fall out. Oh, that really is nice. I haven't heard that one. It definitely looks like she's working on rug warp, and she's using a fine hook, right? Looks like a Joan Moshimer hook. But Eddie, and then a word about hooks, right? Right on schedule, a word about hooks. Look at this beautiful one there. It almost looks like that spaghetti. Um, Remember, like in this one here. Remember in the, I guess it was 60s, 70s, that spaghetti ware. It was like pitchers and glasses that had this kind of soft, kind of rubbery, plasticky coating on that had kind of a spaghetti design. I love that stuff. That's what this hook reminds. I would love to have a spaghetti ware hook. That would never be possible, right? That's not even something to dream about. Wouldn't that be amazing? Do you know the stuff I mean? Because it came in like mint green, kind of like a punch bowl, kind of a pink, like a tangerine orange, very light colors, lemon yellow. They were very light colors. The green one was the most unusual, I thought. They were so beautiful, so beautiful. And I guess the idea was if you dropped them, maybe they wouldn't break because they had this kind of rubbery coating on them. But they broke. I mean, I would not want to try it because they're vintage and lovely. But I love seeing that stuff at flea markets and stuff. That hook is very spaghetti. So let me see in the book where this one came from. Oh, recipe for scones. Celtic colors. Hang on. I'm going to come back to that in a second. I just want to show you some of the other content. So chapters like this, very helpful. Very helpful. So if you want to hook, look at this one is really, this one here is like different kinds of tan and a really powerful purple, like a real poisony purple. That's very, very pretty. Jelly rolling can provide a quick visual guide. It will tell you if the colors work harmoniously together or clash. Even though the red, green, and yellow are intense, these bright colors work well with their neighbors. You can see that the two shades of brown work nicely in a roll. The purple jumps out and the lighter brown disappears. Yep, that's true. Of course, it also depends on placement, right? But I suppose the nature of a Celtic design is that it is intricate and the colors will be near each other. It'd be hard to keep them apart. It's like kids in the back of the car when you're trying to take a trip somewhere. So she talks a lot about color and color planning. And oh yeah, spot dyeing. So lots of technical. I'm on the 30 something page at this point, and it's still very technical. So that's very handy if you want answers, how to answers, right? Irish soda bread. Oh, oh, that is so nice. Why not try baking a warm and hearty bread as a reward for what you've achieved so far? This bread is yummy served with jam and is perfect for either afternoon tea time or breakfast. Serve, I would say served with jam and clotted cream. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it, right? Geometrics. So she has a chapter on geometrics, and this is going to be very, very handy. It includes design, right? So this is a vast subject unto itself, right? When we ran this class, it easily hit the 2 hour mark because there was a lot to say. And even in terms of basics, it says, where do you start? That's the question, isn't it? With knotwork like this. But knotwork truly is, it's a repeat idea, right? Until you hit the edges, everything repeats. And it's the same thing with plaids, right? If you've ever tried to hook a plaid or do a plaid and needlepoint, you just have to pay attention, right? For me, it's almost like attempting to knit. You can't let your mind wander too far. You have to really stay present with what you're doing because for me, it's tricky. And I don't do plaids or Celtic designs often enough to not have to constantly look and go, I screwed that up. Oh, I screwed that up again. And it's just the way that I am too. I mean, it's me, so I'm going to screw a lot of stuff up. And as soon as I take my head out of the game, I realize I've made 5 mistakes. So it really is a lot of this for me is stuff that you really have to stick with and practice. And if your pattern is well drawn and very clear, you should be fine. You should be absolutely fine. And this book will certainly help with that. Hooking Celtic ribbons. So this image that we were looking at a minute ago, to hook a regulated ribbon to be used. So that makes a hook, and this is my opinion, right? And my opinion does not count for much in the grand scheme of things. And we all feel differently, right? But if I were to hook this, right, I'll keep it in the first person, if I were to go on a bender and say close enough and it wasn't really tight and geometric, it might not be effective. I'm just saying for myself, even a pattern like this that isn't overly intricate, right? It's basically a knot, like a cross knot, and it's got two other layers, right? It's got the four rings and it's got the star. And all of these things mean different things in Irish lore. And weirdly, the cross, even if it's an elongated cross that looks like a religious cross, doesn't really represent religion. It represents a spiritual journey, right, in Irish lore. It doesn't represent Catholicism or any branch of religion. It represents a spiritual journey where you start and you get to where you are happy sitting. And it's your journey. It's not the journey or a journey, it's your journey. And there's a big distinction there, right? So interesting looking at these motifs, but you can see the way that they're locked together. You do want to have your pattern really crisp on your backing. So it helps a lot to have in this book a lot of careful tips, a lot of information about keeping it clear, because once you sit down and hook, the cleaner your pattern is with these patterns, I'm guessing, the more foolproof, right? The smaller or less of a margin for error, right? If it was me and I was just directly drawing all of these interlocking knots onto my backing, which is a me thing, and then I go, oh, I crossed this one out, and then and then you don't see it anymore, right? Because it's too messy. It's a do as I say, not as I do, right? Another great recipe here, the slow cooker boneless leg of lamb. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Celtic animals. So a whole chapter on Celtic animals, right? And some of them are like mythical animals. Some of them are truly animals. Some of them are going to be hybrid, like half human, half different animal, because that is part of the folklore, part of the storytelling. Irish fairy tales too often cross into religion and like more mythical, right, than like fable or fairy tale. So there's a lot of material, if you like Celtic art, there's a lot of material to pull from that is uniquely Celtic, and using these kinds of designs and embedding the kind of knotwork and borders that I think you associate with Celtic design, they would be great subjects for this kind of work. Plus, there's so many in this book that are so tempting. Shepherd's pie. That's one of my favorites. Just love shepherd's pie. Time for a trip to Ireland soon. It's been a while. Um, let's see. So this is Illuminated Letters, another chapter just on letters. And we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. Letters can be very intricate. And of course, this would not be like a sustained look. It's usually an initial or a monogram of some sort, or the very beginning of the chapter is really punctuated with a really exciting letter. So the one on the top left has a kind of maybe fish-like or dolphin-like figure on the top, you see, with like the long kind of snout that curls, but it does kind of seem to resolve itself as the fish, and there seem to be some water motifs around it. It doesn't mean necessarily that the it's not like A is for apple, right? It really depends on the subject of the chapter that it's about to introduce. And the L, I think the L is just decorative. I don't see a face in that. It could be that they're both decorative, and I'm just reading that little twist as an eyeball. But yeah, and there's great drawings in here too, where she's showing you how she's working out the design and coloring the design with looks like colored pencils, because yeah, these are tricky. And you know at this point, one of the good things about the computer, and there's not a lot of those, but one of the good things about it is, when you go into like a Word document, there are so many fonts now. So you could, like, for example, if I'm trying to spell something out or I want to include text in a rug, sometimes I put it into a Word document and then I highlight it, and I check. You probably did this 20 years ago, right? But I'm just figuring these things out because I'm really bad. And then I drop down the drop down box and I try to look at what the different fonts look like, and sometimes it goes, oh, okay, well that is what I mean. I just couldn't articulate that. And sometimes I just go online and search for different alphabets, and usually you have to buy them if you really want to use them. But sometimes if you're just looking for one letter or a couple of letters, sometimes looking online is enough to give you ideas for fonts that you would never think of, right? Because there are like infinite numbers of fonts, whether you want like Celtic fonts, and there will be an infinite number of those, I'm sure. But then there'll also be like sometimes I search for like a pharmacy font, like I'm thinking of an old time RX type pharmacy sign or like a mid-century sign, and I put in different words, and it's incredible that something always comes up every time. So having this chapter on illuminated letters is extremely handy because you could start with a simple letter and then bling it out the way Gail's doing in this book and showing us. So the blinging out of the letters, it looks like she's even coloring them with some light little markers there onto the backing, right? And that really is helpful. Maybe I should have photographed that page because you see the drawing and then on the backing fabric. And that is going to be helpful, right? For color planning, it's the same thing with an intricate design as filling it in as you go. It's another great tip to just color with, color safe markers that aren't going to rub off onto your wools and yarns and change the color of what you're actually hooking. But if you do them in a nice, careful, there's a lot of water soluble and child friendly markers out there, which would be ideal for this. But coloring it right on, I think would be great because once you get going, right, you really need to remember and remind yourself once you stand up and go to the bathroom or get some food or put it down for a week or a month or a year, you need to be able to come back and think that was supposed to be blue, right? And I don't want to mess this up because it's takes a little more concentration than a very simple primitive design, right? It's the opposite of a very primitive simple design. So yeah, it's really nice how she gives you a lot of great tips. This whole book is made up of great tips until you get to more hooking tips. I won't do all of them, right? Because I want you to get the book and I want you to win the book and I want you to enjoy the book. This is an interesting one because she's showing it not with the black outline, but with the brown outline. And that's quite nice too. It's kind of like puts you more in mind of like a sepia color, like in terms of printing, right? It wasn't always black. Sometimes it was brown. Oh, microwave custard. Oh, that really looks good. Look at that. Oh, that really looks good. And I guess trifle is different. Trifle is the layered one, isn't it? Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, and she talks about finishing your project too, which is extremely helpful. So this really is a great beginner book. And again, even though I keep emphasizing that Celtic art and design is complicated, not all the patterns in this book are complicated, right? You choose the one that's best for you. Oh, Nancy, good to see you. Been looking at Celtic patterns. I think this would be a great book to have for reference. Absolutely. Because like all of the different things, that we're talking about in the chapters are things you might not necessarily think about hooking a different type of design. So these are things that Gail's picking out because she's so adept and she's so experienced with hooking Celtic designs. She already knows, well, these are the things that are really foremost in terms of remembering, right? This is what you do with a letter. This is an important tip, right? For this kind of hooking, it's really specific and it's really helpful. It is nice to have a kind of niche book like this that is very specific because yes, it translates into every branch of hooking, but for any design that is a bit fiddly and intricate, these are really great tips. Oh, okay. I'm just looking at some of the other things she shows. Displaying your Celtic mat up on carpet strips, right? She shows that, and she's showing finishing them and stitching the tape on, that kind of thing. So some of these are just universal tips, tricks, and techniques. This is the trifle. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That has strawberry or raspberry jam. Why not both? How about a little rhubarb in there, too? And then it goes into the gallery of Celtic designs, which is really exquisite. And let's look at some of the designs together, right? So this is so up till now this starts on page 66. So up till now, she has shown us a little more than 1/3 of the book. She has showed us, almost two-thirds of the book, right? She showed us technique, and we need the technique for this style of hooking. She's shown us a ton of technique. She's been super generous with tips, right? Really what we need to know. And now we get into the actual patterns. And I won't show all of them, right? So that you have some surprises later. I think this is one that we looked at. Yep, that's the interlocking one that we looked at. So these are some of the designs. I'm just kind of flipping through. I'll flip through with you. This one is called Together. That first one, by the way, let me give the title because I have it in front of me, is Not Matrix. Knot, Not Matrix. And this one is called Together. She says, in this pattern, the green snake is larger. So I hooked the smaller snake in a brighter blue to compensate for its smaller size. If the larger one had been hooked in a brighter blue, the design would have been out of balance. Yeah, I agree with that. That's really, really smart. There is more to a little more to the green snake, but you see, it is important in terms of balance to have. There's more blue in the corners, right? So it makes sense to balance out that green. These kinds of decisions and these kinds of oh, Juju, good to see you. We'll take you. We'll take you late. It doesn't make any difference. I'll cut a little bit early today just because I got to get ready for the Paul Klee class right at 1. But we have a bit to go here. It's still early. This is called a pana, Epona. This is a 14-inch circle, and I just want to remind you that the designs in this book are by David Rankine, Rankine, and hooked by Gail Lambert of Lake Charlotte, Nova Scotia. So this one's from 2016. She said, a pana, the horse god, was a challenge. It's a horse god, right? Although I hooked the outlines in all Celtic pieces right on the lines, it didn't work on this one. The legs and the hooves were huge and out of proportion. I hooked this 3 or 4 times trying to get a proper balance. Only by hooking inside the lines was I able to achieve the silver version, the shape I wanted. The horse was hooked using an interesting sparkle fabric from Door Mill. Well, I think we know that one, right? They do their sparkle one, and it's sometimes overdyed in different colors. Absolutely beautiful. I use the silver version, and the piece comes to life when the light hits the metallic-like threads. However, this fabric can't be used for small cuts. Yeah, it's more likely to fray, isn't it? Because it has a metallic content in it. This is an interesting point because Gail making the point about having to make 2 or 3 passes at the legs of the horse. You know, we are in the habit of saying to each other, do I hook in the lines, outside the lines, on the lines? And you always say, pick one and stick with it. This is one of those times that conversation doesn't work, right? She's saying, well, I did what I always do. I hooked on the lines, and that is my fail safe. That is how I always work. It always works. This time it didn't work. And that can happen. And that can be frustrating and bewildering. But the thing is, like Gail's saying, just make a few passes at it. Figure it out until visually it works. There is no rule to anything in this world that is hard and fast. You're always going to have to be a little bit flexible. The main thing to do with any craft and with life in general, I think, is to try to be as confident as you can. Because the more confident you are, you will trust yourself to say, well, I did it the way I think I'm supposed to do it, but it clearly isn't working. I'm going to trust my eye and say, it ain't working. Let's go for door number 2, right? And if door number 2 doesn't work, you go for door number 3, and you hope it's not the lion, but it might be. And you might have to go for door number 4, 5, and 6. But the thing is to be confident and to trust yourself, trust your eye, trust your judgment, trust that you will figure out how to make it work. Because this is not rocket surgery, right? This is a craft, right? And by nature of the word, it's something that you can figure out and you can do. So yeah, it's good to hear how other people solve problems, isn't it? This piece is called Heart Knot. And she says, this was the first Celtic design I ever hooked. While it is not bursting with color, it does have an intriguing design. It sure does. The knot work in this is absolutely beautiful, and you can see there's a little bit of highlighting. You can see it better with the pink color, the rosy color. I think it is really, really lovely. And the dots that are added to knot work, they really don't symbolize anything. Sometimes you see knot work with dots that fill the empty spaces, and sometimes you don't. And I think it naturally begs the question, what do the dots mean? They don't mean anything. It is part of the design, right? So sometimes people use them, sometimes not. Didn't do that on purpose, but it's inevitable on this show, right? In this subject. This is called David's Celtic Tree of Life, and this, again, designed by David Rankine. David's Celtic Tree of Life design is one of my favorites, and I'll be hooking this again. I can imagine hooking 4 trees, one for each season, with this one representing winter. There are only 3 colors in this mat, but because of the ribbon pattern, it looks very busy. Each small background color had to be hooked beside the ribbon section as the tree progressed. Sometimes I had 4 black outline strips parked while hooking the colored ribbon. See, that makes a lot of sense. This reinforces the idea that you hook as you go. Otherwise, it can become maybe a pig's breakfast, right? To use a British expression, a pig's breakfast. You want to keep track of what you're doing as you go, just like with braiding, just like with knitting. Sometimes you've got more than one strand going, right? And you just know that in your head. You lock that in because it's more important to cover sort of inch by inch than it is to, for example, do all of the black and then all of the blue. These designs are a little too intricate for that. Oh, Nancy, we'll see you later. So David's Tree of Life, really beautiful. This one's called the Celtic letter L. And the dark bird in this mat could have been overpowering. However, the beautiful feathers hooked using graduated color swatches bring a joyful energy to the design and balances nicely with the darker bird. The rug hooker felt the background was too boring, so she's talking about herself in the third person here. So she randomly hooked little spots of more intense color to brighten the dull tones. Well, that makes a lot of sense. The rug hooker has to take over. I have to say, I also love the kind of confetti background. You see the little dots of color in this? It reminds me of that Donegal yarn, right? Perfectly appropriate. That has a bit of a tweedy feel to it. The confetti literally refers to a little bit of, well, confetti is different than spot dye. So when you do confetti hooking like a confetti background, you are typically using little strips of other colors and just hooking them in here and there. Almost like when you have something on your eye and you look out and you see this one little line wiggling on top of everything else. Those kinds of little wiggling lines are what make up a confetti background. It can be crowded and colorful, or it can be very subtle and look a little bit like an oatmeal tweed, like this piece does. Really lovely. This piece is called Centered. I like the strong red knot in the middle of this design. Hooking the background in black required a strong central color, and that red knot was perfect. She's got a ton of stuff at the back of the book for you here. This is called Celtic letter J. The red carried from the bird's head throughout to its tail works well and provides a balance with the red used at the bottom of the letter. So it's clear that in all of these different designs, she is giving us a tip for the specific design. Now, this is the one we saw at the beginning, and this one is called Celtic Cross number 1. She's giving us, under each of these finished projects, she's giving us a tip that relates to the exact pattern, Celtic letter T, that she's doing. And it's extremely helpful because you, even as just a reference book, you look at, this is Celtic letter T, I'm sorry, this is Celtic letter K. You look at what she's done, you see what she writes, and she notes if she has had some kind of a heartache with it or some kind of trouble that she's had to resolve. She makes a note of that so that if you're approaching the exact same design, you're going to be able to bypass, right, that pratfall, because she's already noted for you that that danger exists. And it's never something that you would intuitively anticipate, is it? It never is, because everybody has sense, right, common sense, some more than others, of course. I'm not going to expand on that in my own life, but this is called Four Hearts. And she said, this is a fun design to play with, and it can be hooked in many different ways. Just by changing the inside circle to a different color, you'll have a very different piece. Oh, that is interesting, isn't it? I can see that. I really like this design. This looks just like a necklace that I have. I'm going to have to find that necklace. I haven't seen it for a while. But great tips like that. I like the little triangles too. It's a bit Macintosh, a little bit Scottish too. Absolutely beautiful design. I'm looking at this and thinking of ways to change the colors on it too. So some of these will speak to you obviously more than others. We're all different. This must be the Celtic letter F. I hope that there's, okay, there it is. I was going to say, I hope I have this one. This is called Ever Watchful. So this is the blue cat really stands out in this design, and the dark blue in the knot and circles adds dimension to the mat. This almost reminds me of a playing card. I really love this piece because she is introduced, well, David is because he's designing, uh, introducing an animal figure, right? And it doesn't have to be an animal. It can be a person. It can be a profile. It can be a mythic type figure. It can be a religious figure. But introducing a pictorial element to what would otherwise just be not work. And I don't mean just, but you know what I mean. So the cat sitting there like that, ever watchful with that quite serious cat face is really lovely. And the cat looks like it's in blue. It almost looks like a museum piece, doesn't it? Something from the Egyptian wing. Really, really lovely. And just a great idea because while it looks like a playing card in terms of dimension and the framing on it, it does have that great element and it could be personalized. It could be further personalized with initials in those corners where the black dots are. Right? There's lots of things that you could do with this piece that would be really, really exquisite. So just as so that's what we're doing in terms of looking at this. And at the end, just so you know, right, this is the gallery. It goes on, and then all of the pieces are here like this, right? So you're able to blow them up. These are all of the designs in the book. So just to recap, we're talking about a book that at the beginning has profuse, forthcoming, very helpful, very skilled advice on getting started and specifically hooking Celtic designs. And then in the middle of the book, it moves to the gallery, and we are seeing finished pieces, and each one includes a little commentary on how that piece was done, why certain decisions were made, troubles if there were any, and how to resolve the troubles. And then at the end of the book, it's all of the patterns. So this is really a great formula for a book, and it's very, very complete. Jude, hello everyone in sunny Somerset, UK. Definitely hooked on a lot of things. Just need more hours in the day. Oh God, agree. Fully agree. I'm going to end this episode just a little bit early so I have time to set up my computer over there and get ready for the Paul Klee class. So I'll be running that between 1 and 3 Eastern Standard Time today, and I will be repeating the class live on Sunday. So if you sign up for it and you're going to join me on Sunday, you're not going to miss anything. It's the same class twice with 2 different sets of friends who are learning, right, and participating, which makes for 2 different classes completely. So I just want to remind you, if you are interested in winning this book, Hooked on Celtic Rugs by Gail Lambert, send an email to ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com and write in the title Celtic. And then the thing to answer, right, this time is how did you get into rug making? Or if you haven't started yet, maybe you say, I just found it. I'm just thinking about it as one of my many things, one of the many interesting things I want to do when I have more time. That's fine too. It's just a question to get us, started and give us something to talk about. And of course, also in the email, put your address so that if you win, I can forward it to Rug Cooking Magazine, and Erin, that's a perfect name for this book, isn't it? We'll send you a copy of the books. We have 2 copies that we're giving away, courtesy of Rug Cooking Magazine. So I will see you on Friday for cocktail time at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be looking at this book, Hooked on Handwork by Kathleen Eckhouse. So I'm only a couple pages into it so far, but it is a glorious book, and we will have a lot of fun with this on Friday. Also be sending me your stuff for gallery night, because the week after I think it's time for gallery night again. ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. Definitely put the word Celtic so that Jane can find it easily if you're entering the contest for Gail's book. Have a great today and tomorrow. Hopefully I'll see you in a few minutes for Paul Klee. I'm going to log on as soon as I log off. And otherwise I will see you on Friday for